don't know, maybe 15 minutes we're gonna spend on this. This is something that probably some of you have gotten in other classes. Possibly finance classes and whatnot, but, so retirement typically, think whatever your income you make, take 70% of that to account for the fact that you have fewer expenses when you're retired, and you multiply that by 25 years. That's the average time that people are alive and not retired. That's a lot of money in a lot of cases. Dave Ramsey, kind of famous for giving people financial advice. Personal finance is 80% behavior and only 20% head knowledge. We're going to talk about this 20% today. Head knowledge. There are 3 variables to investing as far as your returns go, or how much money you will accumulate as it relates to retirement. The first is present value, how much money you have. Second is the rate of return, your interest rate, how much that money is earning. And the third is the time period and how long for investments to grow. And the most important of these is time, which for most of you is what you've got the most of. Most of you all have more time than you have money. But that's good because that's the most important as far as accumulating money for retirement. Time matters way more than the amount of money, the present value. And rate of return, you don't have a whole lot of control over that, so. See this? Underlined and bolded. Yeah, that's.
Does that mean something?
Next question.
Yeah, there's a good bet some of this will be on test. Yeah. So let's suppose you have $1,000 in an account. This account earns 7%. At the end of 1 year, you have $1,070, which is exciting, which means you've made how much in interest? $70. Way to go. The end of year 2, are you going to earn $70? No, why not? It's compounding, right? So you're gonna make it on 1,070, which makes it a little bit more, and so forth. This process is awesome, and it's something that Albert Einstein called the 8th wonder of the world. Because it's really, once you start getting on, everybody's gonna end up paying interest, or you're gonna have a relationship to interest, I guess I should say. And the question is whether you're gonna be on the benefiting side of that, or on the sucker side of the equation. And life is far better if you're on the compounding interest, benefiting from interest side of the equation. So here's our 7% example, where you start with $1,000. What do you notice after 10 years? It's doubled after 10 years. Brings us to the rule of 70. Rule of 70 gives you an estimation of how long it takes for your money to double. So you just take 70 over the interest rate, and that tells you about how long. So in the case of 7% interest rate, money doubles every 10 years. So let's say it's, instead of 7, it's a paltry 5. How long would it take to double?
The math is.
Who, did you do that in your head?
You're a genius.
There you go.
I don't have to say.
It is working.
It's 14. So what's the, historical average return of the stock market? 12%. Which is pretty good, right? Pretty good. That's a pretty high rate. So let's say it's 12%. How many years for your investment to double? How many?
5.5.
Who said that?
5.5.
Yeah, that was really good.
5.83.
Yeah, that, when you think about doubling your money, does not take a long time. So we're gonna call this 6 years, and we're gonna proceed as if it was 6 years. And we'll give you an example of two students, both 20 years old, and you've got $3,000. Trying to decide whether you want to buy a motorcycle or invest it. Who says motorcycle? Thank you guys for being honest.
Why is that?
The hair mostly.
Yeah, this is really long.
So Jake's our investor at 20. He put that money in, and he's getting a 12% return.
I'm rich.
And he never buys a motorcycle until he's 68, and he buys one that's plated with gold. Because he can afford it.
Then he breaks a hip.
Compare this with this, Jake.
Well, hey.
And instead, so he buys a motorcycle, and then 6 years later, so it puts him off 6 years. 6 years later, he buys, or he invests that $3,000. At 68, what's the difference in how much money they have? It's half, which is how much in this case? How much does the motorcycle, how much did that motorcycle cost? $384,000. This isn't the way most people think, right? This is the way Warren Buffett always thought. He always thought, when he was younger, he was like, I'm not gonna get a haircut.
Which is what I did.
A haircut. It's like a haircut's $180,000. He's not thinking what it's worth right now. He's thinking, if I were to invest that and I were to compound the interest over the course of my life, that haircut, instead of being, $12, it's $180,000. That's how he thought, and that's why he's always one or two or three richest man in the world. This Wells Fargo thing, I think, dropped him down to 3. But that's a place you can live with, right? You can live. He's also donated a lot more money to charity than a lot of, than the number. Carlos Slim is either 1 or 2, and he's never given a dime to charity. And Bill Gates and Warren Buffett both give a lot of money to charity.
Where do you get an interest rate like that?
So this is historical, this would be, if you put it in the stock market, historical return is about 12%. So like an index fund or something, so this is kind of optimistic that you would get 12% over the course of your life, but it's not at all unreasonable. The point is, time is more important than money. And again, that's something that most of you guys have. Another example, 2 students. We'll start with Sam. I love the 3.5 feet they have of blue. So Sam has an income.
I'm gonna stop recording.
What's that?
I'm gonna stop recording this.
Sam has an income, and how old are you?
21.
21. All right. So next year she's going to invest $1,000 in the stock market or an investment. She'll do that for till she's 29, at which point she's going to live off the grid, abandon society, maybe move to Jamaica or Costa Rica. Jamaica, all right. And then at 65, she returns, and her family's, some attorney contacts her and says, oh, you've got this investment you forgot about. Okay, that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is Shannon. Shannon, like most people, gets a job at 30. and starts investing at that point. And Shannon invests every year from 30 to 65. The question is, who comes out ahead in this scenario?
Dang, struggle.
And it's sort of, this is to make the point that it's not how much money you have, it's time. The time matters way more than the initial investment. If you can start making investments earlier, you are way better off than investing more later on. This is my family. This is something my dad has always understood. My dad's been very, very good with his money. When we were little, we always had a dog. The dog was always purebred. We had Pyrenees, and then we had Dobermans. They always bought female purebred dogs. Anyone guess why? So they could have puppies, right? And we'd sell the puppies. And the expectation was that we would help take care of the puppies, right? And then we'd sell the puppies, and we'd get a little bit of the money from the puppies, right? Which we wouldn't touch. He'd put it in an investment for us, and the investment would grow. So at age 4 or so, we got like $400. We did that again, maybe 3 or 4 more times. And different kids in our family, the older siblings were there for more puppies, right? The younger ones were there for fewer. But nobody's investment is under 5 figures now, right? Just by the fact that so you can take a paltry amount, something that kids could earn, you put that in an investment, and you just leave it alone, and by the time your kids are looking to buy a house or something, they'll have a down payment on a house. And it's, all it is you make an investment early, and you can forget about it, or you can keep contributing. Either way, I just think this is really good parenting. It's something that you all should think about as parents, right? So for your own investment, but also for your kids, put them in something, get them to earn money, get them to put that money away.
I was gonna say also, you have to leave it wherever you put it, because my family tries to invest, but they get anxious and they wanna chase better interest, and so then they'll move it. But each time you move it, then you lose, you get fees and stuff like that. And so my dad was moving money a lot, and I pointed out that they charge you 4%, and so if you move it to chase 2 extra percent, then you actually lost 2%. And so you just put it somewhere and then leave it versus moving it every 6 months or whatever. And I think that's hard for Americans to do as well, as just ignore it.
Yeah, to be a good investor, you have to, it's not just intellect, it's, you have to be comfortable watching those returns go south for a while, and just endure it. There's the intellectual side to investing, and then there's the disposition side. And some people are very smart, but they don't have the disposition to invest. And one big part of that is just being okay, just hands off. I think you're right about that. This is true with investments. A lot of people will. I'm reading this book right now, and the author he's a famous psychologist at Arizona State. And when the market crashed, he sold everything. Sold all of his investments because he freaked out, and so he's kind of tongue in cheek about it because I can't afford to retire in the U.S. anymore. I'm gonna have to find somewhere else to retire because I don't have enough money to retire in the U.S. It's kind of sad. All right, that is temporal discounting, and now we'll talk a little bit about pricing. The secret of life is honesty and fair dealing. You can fake that if you gotta be. All right, I'm gonna start with transaction utility. Imagine you're lying by the ocean while on vacation in Mexico. All you've had to drink is ice water. You break out your picnic lunch and begin thinking about how nice it would be if you had some wine. Understand not everyone drinks wine. What's a decent substitute Martinelli's. All right. So everybody in this survey saw this first part. The second part differed. So a friend offers to go get you this particular kind of wine, Kendall Jackson. She saw it at a nearby place where the wine is sold, a small, really rundown local grocery store. He says the bottle of wine might be expensive and asks how much you're willing to spend. Where do you put the price? What price do you tell your friend, this is the most I'm willing to pay? You say 200?
No, 10.
Oh, okay. Other people saw the same exact scenario with the exception that it was a very fancy resort hotel, right? So everything's the same. Now, keep in mind, where are you gonna consume this product?
Beach.
It's on the beach, right? So what would prices be if what people were willing to pay was based on what the product delivers? What would the difference be between these two?
Sounds high.
Why?
Fancy restaurant, fancy resort.
But so in this scenario, or what we're saying is if people are paying based on what the product delivers,
It doesn't matter which one.
then it shouldn't matter, right? Which would mean that the prices would be identical. So if what people are the most they're willing to pay is based only on what the product does for them, then we would expect those numbers to be equal. But if instead people pay what they're willing to pay based on their expectations, then what?
Yeah, survey B would be higher.
Be higher. This is what they found. So about $15 versus about $26.50. So the idea here is that when we talk about price, people have a pretty loose relationship with price. We don't typically know what something should cost, and most of our expectations are guided, or most of what we're willing to pay is guided by our expectations. I'll give you kind of another example of this. So what do you pay for internet access per month on average? What's that?
I think
33? Someone else pay different than that?
40, yeah, 46.
46? 53? So where does that seem to you? High or low? That seem fair? 56, that does seem kind of high.
Doesn't that depend on the bandwidth?
Oh, sure, yeah, it does.
Because like if he has like 100 megabytes per second, then I'd obviously be more willing to pay $50 for that.
That's where I get frustrated is when you pay $50 and then someone that pays $33 has better internet.
TDS probably.
Lack of research.
Is TDS good or not?
Yes.
They were saying it's like straight Netflix.
It's better than Essentials.
Anyway, how much would it cost? How much would what if somebody said, we're gonna shut down the internet unless you pay X? You get no access, or think of it this way, what would someone have to pay for you to not touch the internet for a year?
A lot more than $50.
Yeah.
Right?
$200 a day.
So there's what that product does for you, which would be guided by sort of the actual value of the product, but we get kind of quibbly about 30 versus $50, for example. So it's really expectations that are guiding what we're willing to pay. So here's a kind of a way to think about prices. Introduce a couple terms here. Objective value, what the product delivers. These are pinned to a specific place. Objective value, this is kind of a theoretical idea, what the product actually delivers to the consumer. So we were just talking about wine. The value that offers to consumers is going to vary a lot from person to person, right? who would enjoy a nice bottle of wine? Who would not enjoy a nice bottle of wine? Right? So it's the same, the actual value you get out of the product is gonna vary a lot from one person to the next. That's objective value. The firm's incentive is the difference between the cost of materials and the product price. So cost of materials, this is maybe not the best term, it's the cost of production, right? Which would include, variable costs and fixed costs. Perceived value, this is your perception of what the product's gonna provide for you. That's typically above the product price. What if perceived value is below the product price? You won't buy it. You won't buy it, right? Is it possible for the objective value to be below the product price and you still buy it? What would be a case where you bought something where the objective value was below the product price? That's good. So yeah, that'd be a good example because you're not actually getting anything out of it in a lot of cases, especially if you have, like the emergency only kind of care. But oftentimes you buy something and you're disappointed and you say, I wish I hadn't paid for that. I paid too much for that, right? So in which case your perceived value would be above the product price, but the objective value would be below it, right? Buyer's remorse would be a case where perceived value is above, objective value is below. Typically, advertising efforts are aimed at this spot right here, trying to increase the perceived value, right? Make it seem like you're getting a lot for the dollar. Of course, the consumer's incentive, this is the difference between the perceived value and the actual price. And then a reference price is what you'd expect to pay for something. Does anyone know what's a gallon of milk cost, or do they?
250.
250 to 18.
Who had a pretty good answer for that? Who had no idea what a gallon of milk cost?
Just spots me.
You remember?
Good memory.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, they used to do this thing with politicians, where they'd do these gotcha questions. They'd be like, do you know what a loaf of bread costs? And then some of them would have a good answer, other people. Like, we have no idea what anything costs. They would use this as like evidence that the politicians that they're out of touch with the rest of the people, because they don't know what a loaf of bread costs. Miranda, stop talking. So the reference price is what you'd expect to pay. Transaction utility, which is what makes a transaction more likely. There's transaction utility and disutility. When what you're expecting to pay is below the product price, that detracts from the likelihood you make a purchase. When the reference price is above, that's transaction utility, because it seems like you're getting a better price. We're gonna talk a lot about reference prices.
Wait, so is it how it's labeled? So utility is when the reference price. Oh, okay.
So this is, right, so this is, you expect milk to be $4 and it turns out it's $2. then that makes that transaction more likely. It looks a little bit, it looks like the terms are wrong, but they're right. So you want a relatively high reference price.
Because reference price is higher than product on the graph, and reference is what you think is even.
So this is, the milk costs what, $2.15? If you go into it thinking it's $3.15 and it's $2.15, that,
So the higher point on the graph is not the actual price, it's what you think the price should be.
this is the actual price, this is what you think it would be.
Okay.
That's the reference.
That makes more sense now, I got it.
Yeah, what you expect to pay or what you think the product costs.
Graphs are hard.
What's that?
Some graphs are hard.
So we're gonna talk about different reference prices. Again, this is what you expect to pay. Look this up. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Does anyone like Cinnamon Toast Crunch here? Raise your hands. Yeah, it's good stuff. How much does it cost? This is the smaller box. Who raised that? You raised your hand. No, Taylor, you raised your hand. What does it cost? What's a box? A small box. Cinnamon Toast Crunch
I
cost.
don't know, because I get the big one.
How much is the big one?
Split it in
I'll have
half.
to get it.
Somebody shoot a price at me.
$3. Yeah, like $3.50.
250.
Cereal's expensive.
It's about $3.
The box is
Yes.
in the bag.
Oh. Yes.
$3.50, you kidding me?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I know,
That's not bad.
after taxes.
I just looked it up and, so this was from last semester. It's $3.12. So there you go. So that's an internal reference price, right? Where you just, when people's kind of hunches about what something should cost, that's an internal reference price. So, you know, if somebody had told you it's $12, even if you didn't know, if somebody told you it's $6 or $12, you would know that that's not what you'd expect to pay. An external reference price is a price for something that's identical or very similar. So there are lots of different kinds of reference prices, external reference prices, and the point of these is to enhance transaction utility by making it,
More affordable than the original one, the brand
yeah,
name.
right, by making it seem more affordable, right? Because again, most people don't know what something should cost. And so by giving you a reference price, it tells you whether this is a good price or a bad price. So there's lots of ways to do this. Previous list price, manufactured, suggested retail price, the average price. In the case, so is this a good price? Is this a good price? So the Great Value brand, where do you find the Great Value Cinnamon Jobby Crunch?
Right next to that one.
You find it right next to the real one, right? It's a reference price. This enhances transaction utility for the Great Value Cinnamon Toast Crunch, right? By making it seem less expensive, right? You have a reference price that's almost always gonna be higher. And that's why these are located next, you know, it would make sense to have a section of just Great Value, right? I mean, you could imagine a store organizing it that way. But then you'd lose the reference price, right? You lose the ability to contrast what the main brand is as compared to the cheapy brand. Does anyone eat the cheapy brand here? So you're all purists?
I'm not.
Marshmallow maybe.
Oh, yeah. I think some products, it depends on what the store brand is. Like, I would never eat store brand Pop-Tarts.
They
Those
have
taste like,
great value Oreos too.
and those are also awful on detriment of my weight loss plan.
The Great Value Oreos? What's that, what's the other fake, like, it's not a Clorox. it's, what is that called? They look like Oreos. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No.
It's like,
It's something ox.
it's something ox,
It's
right?
something ox, yeah.
So the Oreo actually copied that original. I gotta look that up now. This is important, so you guys know.
I feel like cereal
Almost feel like I need to write it down.
Hydrox.
Hydrox, that's it.
Yeah.
So this actually was, the Hydrox, this was around before Oreos, and Oreo totally knocked them off. Oreo was the copycat in this case, but you would never guess that. Anyway. External reference price,
Wait, is Hydrox a cookie or is it a cleaner?
that's probably one of the reasons Oreo did better.
Yeah, that was an awful
Why do they make themselves Hydrox?
It was back in the 50s, maybe before that,
Clorox.
before it sounded like a
Yeah.
detergent.
Oh, eat Hydrox.
All right, so who can spot the reference price here?
One nice.
Yeah.
That's a deal.
So is this a good deal or not? I mean, who knows what you should pay for a bunch of VHS tapes of World War II bombers? Most of us don't have a firm sense for what that should be. And so here they provide, a reference. It's outrageous but the point is, this seems like a good deal when you compare it to the reference price. There's a hand over here.
Oh, I had a question. So, with these, do you think they originally sold them for that price? They didn't hit their their target sales, and so they dropped them. We're like, we got to get rid of this crap. It's not as cool as we thought it was. And so then they do that kind of reference pricing, or is that not a thing?
So there's some legal requirements, and I don't know what they are, but you do have to price it for a time and sell some at the original price.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know what, that number is pretty low, that standard's pretty low for describing something as originally 119. But the point is that my hunch on this is that they were never intending to sell them for 119. It was always gonna be $20.
I have a question on that. So has there been a psychology study, or is it just me, but like, when it's a drop that big, my brain automatically says don't buy that product because it's a piece of junk. Whereas if they would have just dropped it from like 120 to 100, then my brain still thinks it's a deal, but when they drop it past a certain percentage, then it's like, oh, that's a ripoff type thing.
I don't know. I don't know that doesn't seem uncommon to me. This idea that it seems too good to be true, right? I think
Yeah.
most people would look at something that was originally 119 and drop $100. I think most people would look at that with a little bit of skepticism.
It's like those commercials where you see like you can buy a laptop for $7 and you can buy a TV. Like it's like the bidding side.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
like you never want to go on because you're like, there's no way people are getting laptops for $7. And they might be, I don't know, but I don't trust it because it seems too good.
Well, like, that's true, but like, every bid that you do costs you like $1.
The way they make their money is that a lot of people pay. So on like eBay, you bid, and if you don't get it, you don't pay anything.
Yeah.
But on these, every time you bid, you pay. So they might sell it for $7, but they've got, they've got 1,000 people who all paid $5 for it. So they come out way ahead.
Each penny the price goes up, they made $1. So if it's $7, then they made 700 times $1.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
700, yeah, 700.
Yeah, those, I don't see those anymore. It seems like those have kind of disappeared, right? The Quibids and stuff like that.
One.
What is it?
Beezid.
Beezid, is that still around?
I don't know.
Yeah. Somebody buy something from Beezid and bring it to class. So, a couple kinds of reference prices. There's internal, which is just kind of your hunch of what something should cost. External would be like manufacturer suggested retail price or a similarly priced product nearby. And then the third type is an incidental one, which has no bearing to or should not relate to the actual cost of the products. But in some cases it does. So let's say you've got a 66 Corvette Roadster, Blue Book on it is $33,000. Who do you want to go before you, the 71 Duesenberg replica or the actual 33 Duesenberg?
So,
So there's a couple of researchers who analyzed car auctions from 95 to 2000, and they, there's a lot of people who attend these auctions. There's a lot of professional bidders. And so you would think with all these people who are like car enthusiasts and people who are, they bid on cars, they buy and sell cars professionally, they should be pretty adept at kind of finding good deals and not being swayed by things that are unrelated to the price of the car, such as the price of the car that went before it, right? Logically, whatever somebody paid for the car that went before yours on the auction should have no effect on the car that you're actually selling, right? But that's not what they found. So when the price of the first car was 100 to 200% of Blue Book, the car that sold after that sold at 15% above Blue Book. If it was, that first car was 200 to 300% of Blue Book, the next car sold at 38% above Blue Book. 300 to 400%, then the next car sold at 72%. It's kind of amazing, right? Those prices should be completely disconnected. But this is an incidental price anchor or reference price where something that is unrelated to what you're actually buying affects your perception of what that should cost. And that's why I did this little survey with you guys on the neckties and so forth. So the question I was interested in was the necktie price, because the one that came before it had two different prices. So half of you got a cheap English book, which was $42 to $62. And other people got one that was $142 to $162. And the question is, would that affect the price of you would be willing to pay for a boss necktie, assuming you know what a boss necktie is?
Also, your question didn't say what we're willing to pay, it says the expected price.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that I would pay that much for a necktie.
Yeah, I think
But-
I probably did willing once and nobody, I
Yeah.
probably had to switch that to expected pay. Did you see Greg? Are you Greg, right? Oh, you're Matt. Where's Greg? Oh, yeah. You guys look a little bit alike. Am I wrong? Yeah? Yeah, Greg wrote in 149 over the English book. Yeah. All right. By the way, I used to work for a textbook manufacturing company. There's a lot of money in textbooks. All right. So I'm gonna start reading off prices here. This is for, I'm gonna read several for the higher price, and then I'm gonna switch to the lower price. So $94.99, $89.99, $92.63, $92, $89, $94, $94.99, $91.34, oddly specific. 90, okay, those are all for the high price. For the lower price, $89.99, $89.99, $89.99. This is working out better than I thought. $89.99, $89.99, $93.99, $92, $89.99. So you can kind of see, even in this class, the price that came before, which was the textbook price, affected your perception of what the tie would cost, right? And that's completely, obviously, those shouldn't be related. That's why we call that and incidental reference price. So coming back to this question,
You definitely want the high, the 6 inches.
yeah, you definitely want the actual Duesenberg, right? That's gonna look good for your, whatever your roadster sells for.
Do like cost of living items follow this? Where like, cause someone can manufacture someone in the Midwest and then ship it to California and charge a lot more than if they shipped it to like Arizona, even though the shipping costs would be relatively the same. Are they doing the same concept because you're paying more for milk in California, so you're gonna pay more for this other item?
Everything's more expensive.
I'm not totally following.
Yeah.
Like everything's more expensive in California, so obviously if you bought like a four-wheeler here and then took it to California, you could probably sell it for a whole lot more than if you took it to Arizona, which is.
Well, yes, but part of your costs are always gonna be, distribution cost, that's always gonna be part of it. And the cost to ship something there, that's gonna eat your, once things get out of sync far enough, then it makes sense, but, I think I give this example in my marketing principles class, but there was a soap company that sold soap for different prices to different countries, and they were selling it to Mexico for less than they would sell it to the US. And then when that price got far enough out of balance, then they started they started buying, grocery stores would buy it from Mexico, right? So that doesn't.